Golden State Warriors have had a pretty rocky start to the 2023-24 season. They've gotten some impressive wins over some impressive teams, but they've also lost to teams that, in my opinion, they really shouldn't be losing to. A lot of those losses were due to players being out, players not showing up, or times where the opposing team is just better. And the team is for real looking like a shell of what they used to be in 2022. And obviously the roster is different, right? There are many players that are not there anymore. Some of the players who were on that championship team that are still playing for the team have regressed a little bit. Some have went through injuries. You get the deal. But from a roster construction perspective, I feel like the Warriors have really messed up this decade. And people could say, oh, well, they won a championship, which is a good thing. I'm not trying to take that away from the organization. But the team that they had and the potential moves that they could have made, they could have had a second stretch of dominance throughout the 2020s, and they could have left a even greater legacy than they already have. And when I'm looking at the 2023-24 roster for the Golden State Warriors, I'm seeing the consequences of not picking a direction. 2022 Warriors were kind of like a mixed bag, right? You had your core, you had Steph, Dre, and Clay. You had guys like Kevon Looney still there. You had other vets like Otto Porter Jr. there. But with your core and your vets, you also mixed in young guys like Jordan Poole, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, and James Wiseman. And those four players, they fit into the Warriors system, and they also had a ton of potential. The mistake that Golden State made was trying to prepare for a potential rebuild while also trying to contend. And the hard truth in the NBA is that you just can't have it both ways. You can't prepare for a rebuild while also contending for a championship. You have to go one way. And if you look at that 2022 playoff run, Jordan Poole was the only player that was not only getting consistent minutes, but was a part of the Golden State Warriors offense. It was mainly due to the regression of Klay Thompson. I'll detail that further later, but as far as Poole is concerned, there were nights where he was the second option instead of Klay. During that regular season, Kuminga and Moody were getting minutes, but for the most part, they weren't getting the reps that young players are supposed to get in order for them to be more fully developed as NBA players and potentially star players. Now, I'm not saying that Kuminga and Moody had superstar potential or anything, but if they were in a situation like Utah, they would be a lot better than they are right now. And even the season after their championship, Kuminga and Moody got more minutes and they didn't turn out that great. If Golden State would have traded them for a viable player or even another star to pair with their big three, they could have possibly went back to back, or they could have three-peated. Now, obviously, you can't be too sure about these certain things, but if we're looking at the present day Golden State Warriors, I mean, the loss of Jordan Poole is really showing. Outside of Steph Curry, you're relying on Andrew Wiggins, who can be inconsistent. You're relying on Klay Thompson, who so far this season, he's been looking completely washed. And then you're also relying on a damn near 40-year-old Chris Paul to provide offense for you. Now, don't get me wrong, Chris Paul has been playing pretty well in his time in Golden State. Compare that to what Poole was doing for Golden State in 2022, and it pales in comparison. Now, obviously, Jordan Poole didn't play well in the 2023 playoffs, and that was probably a big reason why the Warriors decided to move on from him. Well, I wouldn't say that's the only reason, but it gave them like a more justified reason to do so. Obviously, the stuff with Draymond is a whole other thing. But even then, during that time, it's not like stars weren't available. Like, for example, they could have gathered up all their assets and they could have tried and go after a guy like Joel Embiid, for example. And I know in hindsight, people are going to be like, oh, well, Kuminga, Moody, and Wiseman, they're not worth Joel Embiid. And it's like, yeah, obviously now that we see them for who they are, those players obviously were not as great as everyone was hyping them up to be. But the thing that the Warriors could have sold any trade suitor on is potential. But because Golden State decided not to pull the trigger and go in that direction, those players have less value and they're forced to make moves like what they did with James Wiseman and just send him to Detroit for very little in return. And as far as what they should do in terms of like improving this roster and getting another guy next to Steph Curry, it might be time for them to just move off of Klay Thompson. And I know trading Klay Thompson is very, very, very controversial in the eyes of like the Warriors fan base. And me personally, I'm not ready to see Klay Thompson potentially in a Bulls jersey. Like that would just throw me off. But to me, it's the right move. Now, obviously, you're going to have to give up some more pieces, but Zach LaVine and Golden State, to me, is what the Warriors need. And if you have to give up Klay Thompson in order to do it, you might just have to make that sacrifice. And I know the Warriors are big on continuity. Continuity has been their thing since 2016. This big three has been together ever since 2013, bro. They've been running the league for damn near there a decade. It's gonna hurt to see one of them get traded away, but at the end of the day, Klay Thompson is just not good anymore, and that's just a tough pill that Warriors fans just have to swallow. I'm sorry I had to say it, because Golden State, they cannot afford to waste the last stretch of Stephen Curry's career. Stephen Curry is 35 years old. I'm not saying this like he doesn't have much time left. The end of Stephen Curry's career, it'll be here sooner than later, and because Golden State has been in this like stalemate with what direction they like fully want to dive headfirst into, I think it could cost Stephen Curry probably like the last 4 or 5 years of his career. And Klay isn't even the only one. Draymond Green hasn't been that great either, but in terms of value, Draymond Green is 1,000 times more valuable than Klay Thompson. I'm not saying you can replace what Klay Thompson does, but if you're getting this version of Klay Thompson, he's way easier to replace than peak Klay Thompson. Draymond still brings you defense, he still brings you playmaking, he still fits in the system, and he still brings those intangibles that might get him kicked out of games, but that's just, you know, what comes with having Draymond on your team. You're going to get a lot of aggression and things like that. And if we're looking at every team that is in the Zach LaVine sweepstakes, Golden State is the one that needs him the most. I know people are talking about LA, people are talking about Philly, even New York, but all those teams are already great offensively. The Golden State Warriors just simply cannot continue to just solely rely on Stephen Curry to carry their offense. I don't want to see another 2021 from the Warriors, and in a hypothetical trade, I don't even think the Warriors would give up that much. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the situation. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button below, subscribe for more videos, comment down below your thoughts. Do you agree, disagree? Let your voice be heard down there. But that is the end of this video. Follow all my links down below, and I'm out. Peace.